And also, Michelle, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, there you are. Now we see you really well.
Okay. I'm glad.
I love your background, Naeem. It looks very Vincent van Gogh.
I mean, this is my son. He does this mural thing. He used to. So he stopped. He got to graduate level school, so he stopped drawing. So in high school, he used to enjoy doing this.
We are on the line now, so.
Okay.
Okay.
We just got a phone from Maria saying we're on the line. So we're going to start here in about 1 or 2 minutes, but maybe we need to be just quiet for a moment and then I'll start it. I don't think it's quite 7 o'clock yet, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 7. Yeah.
Okay, we shall start. Welcome to our 6th Racium panel discussion. It's sponsored by Global Faith in Action and the Beyond Tolerance movement. And I'm Sam Meiskens, president of Global Faith in Action and host for this very exciting and unusual panel discussion. We are calling tonight's panel discussion A Dialogue Through Song, the Color of Justice. In other words, are people of color treated equally? We have an exciting panel tonight. I'd like to introduce them to you. First of all, let me introduce you to Denise Sherman. She is the executive director of the Kansas African American Museum. We're so pleased she could be with us. She's the first time we've had her as a panelist. And then there's Dr. William Van and Dr. Michelle Van, his wife. They're pastors of the ISIS Christian Center. And then there's, I don't know if we have Mother Frankfurt, Dawn Frankfurt. I haven't seen her. She hasn't arrived, has she? So we'll go over her. Maybe she'll show up still. And then there's Naeem Baout. He's president of the Ahul Da'it Islamic Center in Wichita. And I usually have a little trouble with saying the right words there. Sister Deborah Dirks is author and community organizer and educator and a member of the Islamic community. And then there's Rabbi Michael Davis. Rabbi Michael Davis is a rabbi of the congregation of Emmanuel. And right now he is in the center, and all the people who are working with him are part of his Jewish community. They're all having the Hanukkah. And so we're pleased that in the middle of Hanukkah, you would come and be a part of this rabbi. Thank you so much. And then there's Serinda Moore. I don't know whether she can show herself or not, but she's our Zoom host tonight. And she's also the director of Alternative Gifts International. And then the last one, at last, Anthony Brown, our soloist. Now, Anthony, as we also know him as Tony, is an internationally acclaimed baritone singer. He's a promoter of peace and goodwill around the world. Ethiopia, Bosnia, Russia, China, Haiti, Ukraine, and I'm sure other countries he has brought together in various ethnic and religious groups. So today, Anthony is going to take us through a dialogue in song. 4 songs he's going to sing, discussing the color of justice. Have we treated people of color equally? The first song Anthony will share is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Anthony will begin our dialogue by sharing how this song is coming. Well, after he sings this song, he will be sharing a little bit as to how it came into being. So Tony, we want to hear from you right now. Sing Low, Sweet Chariot.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I'm sometimes up and I'm sometimes down, coming for to carry me home. But still my soul is glory bound, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home, tell all of my friends I'm a coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
We often think of this song as a chariot coming to take the enslaved ancestors away to heaven after death. But the image of an earthly chariot that would lead them to freedom and restore their dignity is and was much more appealing to them. And while heaven is a place that they often thought about, they were also fixated on justice, freedom, fairness. Home was the North. Home was Africa. And home was heaven.
Thank you. And let's us for a little while talk about what's happened to the slaves. What happened to the slaves after Civil War, Abe Lincoln and the Civil War? Did the white people do anything to try to help them to become equal to the rest, or did other things happen? If some of you know this history and so on, let's just before we hear the next song, let's talk a little bit about that as to what happened, and did they get any help, and did we pay them anything to help them get started? Anything?
The old saying is that they were given 40 acres and a mule. And that happened very seldom. Many of them moved from the South. In some cases, like in Macadamus, Kansas, they were brought by the railroad, being promised a home. However, when they arrived, the shacks were mainly caves with a little, like a door. And many of them left right away because it was unlivable. And so often what was presented as even a handout in that original time, right after the Civil War, was not carried out the way it was presented.
Any other thoughts, or anything that you can tell us, Tony, about what happened? Why didn't, Abe Lincoln used to always be saying, all people are created equal. I played the song. I was Abe Lincoln in Abe Lincoln in Illinois when I was in college, and I played the part of Abe Lincoln. And I know that he was what his speeches all were about was that all people are created equal. And he wanted to become a president, but it's still, after they got their freedom, it didn't really work as we had hoped it would work.
I think after they got freedom, there was a time period where maybe Reconstruction started and African Americans were doing better. But once I think white America figured out that they would quickly become equal, perhaps surpass in some ways, then there were strategies put in place to now derail all of the progress that had been made. Everything from a change of mindset of how people thought about African American people to just outright shooting, murder, lynching, scare tactics. I personally don't think that that has changed that much. I think that as African American, our resilience to overcome these kind of barriers is still strong. The Swing Low, Sweet Chariot is a wonderful song. It talks about almost an afterlife, a future status that we hope for. But quite honestly, for me, at this point in my life, I don't want to hope for it anymore. We're going to have to make it happen, whether it's by force, whether it's by whatever it has to be. I'm just not Swing Low and Sweet Chariot anymore. I'm not. I mean, either we're going to make something happen, and if that requires whatever it requires, then that's just what it takes. Because it's been these are my opinions, so you don't have to agree with them. But it's been too long of trying to overcome for too many years, and there's more and more barriers. So at some point, you just have to say, I hate to be Malcolm X, but whatever it takes to bring this change is what we're going to have to do. And some people are going to be offended. Some people are going to hate it. Some people are going to love it. But at the end of the day, I don't think we can wait. I don't think we can wait for a change to come, it's time to make a change happen.
You know, Tony, this sounds something like the song you're about ready to sing the second one, because it's the name of it is "I've Been in the Storm Too Long," and I think that's what I heard Bill saying. It's just, I've been in this storm too long. We've been in this storm too long. We better do something about it. You want to sing that right now for us?
Yeah, just to say one other thing about Swinglow, what I said,
Okay.
you know, about Swinglow is that, you know, they were looking for help. And I think what Bill is saying is that we're still looking for help. Come and help me is really part of what Swing Low, Sweet Chariot is about. And in 2020, we are still asking for help. Now, we can certainly be a part of that help ourselves, but this is a multicultural country, and if we have each other's interest at heart, then we collectively engage in helping people get to where they need to go. I've been in the storm so long.
Can I say something before you start?
Sure.
I heard your statement earlier during the song. So I'm not versed on post Lincoln era, but I heard you mention those couple of words that I wrote down. You said the song is about justice, about freedom, about fairness, about home was Africa, home was heaven.
Yeah.
So if we look past post Abraham Lincoln's era and we get to the 2020 now, or let's say 2016, we start there. Do we have a justice for all, regardless of color? Do we have freedom for all without color? Do we have fairness without color? So we can put actually question mark on all these statements, saying we still don't have the justice that we seek, and it's supposed to be across the line. We don't have the freedom we would like to have because we're still being questioned and stopped. We don't have the fairness, whether it's in employment or in the judicial system or in housing or banking or whatever.
Yes.
So so even though it has been a long time since Lincoln time, we're still lacking all those items you just mentioned there.
Amen.
We're still struggling. I mean, I'm not African American, but I can see that the African American community is still struggling to get to these 5 items, these at least 3 items there.
It's so true.
Okay.
I agree with you completely.
I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, children. I've been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. Oh, let me tell my mother how I come along. Oh, give me little time to pray. With a hang down head and an ache in the heart, oh, give me little time to pray. 'Cause I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, children. I've been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. Oh, when I get to heaven, gonna walk all about. Oh, give me little time to pray. There'll be nobody there to turn me out. Oh, give me little time to pray. 'Cause I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, children. I've been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. 'Cause I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, children. I've been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. Oh, give me little time to pray.
What do you think the lyrics are trying to say? What do you think is happening? Have we paid any attention to figure out what's going on with the people today? Have we looked at all with the people of color, whether they are being treated the same as white people in incarceration and jail? Have they been in the storm too long? Are the children of color being treated equally in schools and so on? Are even people who have, even African-American folk who have managed to raise enough money to live quite well, are they also still feel like they're in that storm and are not treated equally when they get out and walk within the community? What do we have to say about that today? If some of you share what your thoughts are.
You know, if I may, I have no special insight here, but when the singer is saying, I need a time to pray, give me a moment to pray, it's like he's saying, I've been hit with all these things, are hitting me in the face over and over and over. Just give me a second. Give me a second to pause. I need a moment to gather myself together, to get some strength so that I can face what's coming up. Swing low, yeah, when Tony said it the home, to carry me home, that home could mean Africa, the home could mean up north. I had never heard it that way. I never thought of it that way. I always thought of it being the words, the song of a people so desperate that they long for death. They're saying, death has to be better than what we're going through now. Just that. And was their time better afterwards? It was probably better, but certainly the white establishment was not willing to give up its privilege. And so it couldn't be much better. And has that changed? It has changed, but very, very slowly. And so, yes, they are still being hit in the face. They're still trying to walk against the wind. And they just need a respite. The singer is saying, I just need a moment to gather myself, gather some strength, praying for strength so that I can face what I have to face tomorrow, which is more of the same.
If I might add here just a little bit, when we started out the conversation, it talked a little bit about, the Reconstruction period. And just to kind of give it a little context for Kansas, the history of the Exodusters, which were a group of African Americans who were traveling to Kansas in search of freedom, were led by Benjamin Pat Singleton. And many African American towns and thriving communities were established. And so as we talk about struggle and pain and all those sorts of things, there was certainly some victory as well. We do have one yet remaining African-American town still west of the Mississippi, Nicodemus, that was mentioned earlier. And certainly celebrated today as not only the evidence of the strength and the fortitude of African Americans, but also that thriving communities and successes were certainly abound, even in the most trying time. And so when you look at 50,000 people from the state of Tennessee and Kentucky and Mississippi and the deep southern states that were reestablishing themselves and families here in this community, many with legacy here yet today, who can trace those roots back. I don't want to forget let us not realize that there's still very much a story that's relevant today. And so as we look at and face the trying times that we have, there's still a resilience that is often expressed through song, as we're hearing Dr. Tony sing, and also gives a insight to the political and social and economic times throughout many periods. I think that's the wonderful thing about song and music, is that it tells a story much more than just the words. The words certainly give us some context, but when you look at the tone and the tenor, it expresses so much more. But just wanted to circle back to really share that while there's much to be gained and much to work towards, even in the worst of times, there was still success, and there was still Africans and African Americans have been a very resilient people, and I think it's still evident today that through all of this, not no more so than anyone else, but certainly a demonstration of our strength and our power in community. Amen. And in our religion and in our song and our spiritual life. And just wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing that. That was things we needed to hear. I'm sure some others have thoughts about this, because it's very important that we try to help our community and our country be aware of what has happened that has caused the issues that we have today. In the past, so much as was not done that we should have been doing. We, when I say we, I'm talking about white people who felt we had we just didn't even know what was happening. I mean, we were completely dense of it all. I think it's happening now that we know a little more about what's going on, but we've got to keep telling that story. And I hope we can tell that story tonight as to what was it that has caused us to not treat each other equally.
Well, perhaps that's the, I'm sorry, go ahead, Denise.
Okay, well, I think it's very important to really understand that there's other underlying systemic issues that sustain and give power to that, which are economic. Much of this country was built on the backs of African American slaves. I mean, you just have to understand that the resource and how it was a privilege and a power structure that keeps, the issues even till today. I mean, that's part of it. I think that as we tend to look at resources and how they're allocated and how they're kept within certain societies and not available and attainable. When I say resource, I mean all types of resource. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical or tangible resource. It could be knowledge. It could be accessibility to different things. And so as we're sharing this, I mean, it's more than just, there's definitely a root to a lot of it. And I think when you look at root causes, I think it kind of really gets down to the core. And that's hard that's hard to, if you're the person who has the power and the privilege, it's kind of hard to give up, right?
That's it. It's giving up, and it's this is what is facing, I believe, white society now. The post-Civil War whites in the South, they were not willing, they were not giving up their rights, their privileges willingly. And perhaps the second song is saying, you people who think it's over, who think we have reached equality, we haven't. And I'm still facing this. The black man says, I'm still facing this. The black woman says, you may think we've gone beyond racism, but we haven't. I'm still facing, and it is still up to you to give up some of that privilege.
Well, I think the other piece too is that we have to look at the fact that, so if you want to go all the way back, if you want to go back to Lincoln, he didn't care whether we were a slave or free. He just wanted there not to be war. So it really wasn't a matter of that he wanted anybody to be free. It was that he didn't want war, period. If you listen to his whole speech, part of it, he says, if we could be 50-50, then life would be great, but we can't do that. So we've got to make a decision. And I would just assume, whatever happens, we just need to be not going to war. So I think that's one factor. I think the other factor is that, so while you have slavery-based songs, they do have some relevance to today, realize that the mentality and the fervor in which a slave was singing a song, somewhat, because there were slave songs had levels of meaning. So some of the songs, while it may have had a what sounded like to a slave master might have sounded very generic and might have sounded like a song that was about God and about this or about that, but it was really about, this is how we're gonna get away tonight. I need you to come on down by over here so we can get out. This is what we're gonna do. This is the message. So there's multiple messages in any song that we look at that was based in that slave period. There's multiple meanings in any of that. So when we start to look at it and we start to try to unravel it from a 2020 standpoint, we will always miss that because we don't understand truly all of the intricacies in which they were trying to give messages, relay messages that were multi-leveled in their purpose. And so it wasn't just, we're singing this song because we don't have anything to do. We're singing this song because we're trying to relate to somebody across the field that, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And we need to stay focused that while this person is in my face and while this person is providing me a lot of antagonism, I can't be focused on them because I have to be focused on something beyond this, because otherwise I will lose hope. And I think that, so whether we look at this from that perspective or we look at it from a 2020 perspective, which is at the end of the day, all of these are about hope. And so we really look at how do we build and how do we gain and how do we give everybody of color, because I think if we get stuck on slave, then we also lose perspective, because in America they're not just looking at Black people, they're looking at all the brown people, and at some point they put us all in a bucket and say all of y'all need to go somewhere else. So I don't think that we can just put it at the door of Black people, even though we see, because of the media. Okay, and again, we go back to Reconstruction. Part of the media piece was that we want to make sure that we put in the media that they are killers, that they are rapists, that they are thieves, that they are all of these things that have not changed in our media. So Reconstruction brought about a whole lot of things that began to change the mindset of people and curb the mindset of people. And so those things have not changed. So media still says that Black men are scary, Black men are someone to be feared, Black men are the people that go to jail, all of these things. And so they perpetuated a stereotype that has continued.
And if you feed a person that for long enough, they'll begin to believe the lie themselves. And at that point, they just perpetuate the badness over and over again because they actually believe it. And once I believe what level I'm on, I lose hope of ever becoming anything greater or better than what you have convinced me I am. So this thing is systematic, it's generational. And so what we're seeing now is the results of generations of being oppressed, but not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. And I just think that the question was asked, are we being treated equally? Do adults of successful financial still feel they have been in the storm too long? I think the storm has never ceased to the point where I'm accustomed to adjusting my sails for the storm. I mean, if you're in something long enough, you better learn how to navigate through it. That's just the truth. And so we're navigating through the storm still on unequal terms. And if we would ever have equal terms, which I don't know if we ever will, because as Rabbi Mike said, people don't want to give up that power. In America, it's about power. It's about money and it's about power. And I don't want to lose either one of them. So I'm going to create systems. I'm going to step on people. I'm going to incarcerate people because at the end of the day, I am terrified of losing my privileged position because I really, at my core, don't know how to operate by any other system.
I would agree with that. And I would agree that even if there was an institution of slavery, you move out of that, but you move into another institution and then another institution and then to another institution. So the institutionalization of how, which I still believe a lot of times is power, privilege, and economically driven, when you really get to the root and core of it. Whether you move from one to the other, there was still from slavery to sharecroppers, from sharecroppers to this, to the other. And while you may gain some ground in privileges, somewhat of institutions like education that are maybe established for African Americans, or you get into some power, some institutions and financial and banking and things like that. Eventually, if they become too successful, there will be yet another institution that will come along. Some other external factor will be developed to can that or put that in place. And so whether it's housing or whether it's in the workplace, whether there's always some other power, privilege, or institutional or some systemic entity that has been developed to make sure that doesn't get out of control. So you make a couple of gains here and then you call it something, and then you move over there and you call it. And when you look at the end results, such as the prison systems or lack of moving into the higher ranks of organizations, I mean, when you look at that, then people are, as was stated earlier, you have to look for outliers or other ways to navigate through the system. And so, we might want to defile all of the, the drug lords or the folks who work this or do that, but some of the most intelligent, most successful business people, if are those that are working outside of the system, because they're not allowed in the system. And when you think about, you want to defile these people and say that you're a bad person because you're outside of the system that we won't let you be a part of. But in essence, they've navigated and found another way to get around it. That's sometimes hard to take. But again, I think some of the most successful, creative, intelligent folks are those that have figured out a way to work through it, because you normally have to, as I was told at a very young age, you're going to have to outperform, outlast, outthink, out whatever, in order to not even begin to be thought of as equal, just to have a chance. And most of the time you're going to be feeding into someone else's success who will not allow you to get past a certain, because they need you in that space, but isn't that the same institution of slavery? Because if you were working the field or building this or doing that, you were still doing that same thing, being creative. You know, you're the blacksmith, the you know, you worked the land, you did this, you built the railroads, whatever you were doing
The nanny.
in that system, right? Someone else was benefiting by it, not you. And because that was so powerful and profitable, we're not ever going to let you get past that and to join up and move up. And so when I said earlier that there were some successes and Black people who were thriving, you can go right back to many, many examples, such as Black Wall Street in Tulsa, that they're a community of thrivers who developed a community that was much more successful than the communities around it. And once that was identified and determined that we can't allow that to happen, we're going to go destroy it, because if we can't take it over, we're going to get rid of it. And that, I think, is the repetitive pattern that comes up over and over again. If I can't control you in slavery and we let you out of slave, then we'll become a sharecropper. If you can't be a sharecropper, then you're gonna go into the plant, or you're gonna work in low-paying jobs, because that's the only way you're gonna get in. And one or two might creep up and be able to have some mild success over a period of time. But if there is some way to equalize that, and there starts to be too much of a gain, then there's going to be another system come in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we're going to make it harder. I don't know where I heard this, and Michelle, you might be able to help me out with this, but they say by third grade, African-American male that's the turning point of whether their trajectory is going to be in the prison systems or going to be in the successful system. But that doesn't mean that they're not any more smarter or creative or any of those things than anyone else. It's just that that seems to be the turning point of whether you go one way or the other. And so we have to fight even harder to make sure that our young males stay in the path with with odds that would probably crush most people, to try to be successful and get out of that. But there's a reason for that, right? Because, there's no point in having jails if you don't have people in them. And people who run the jails make a lot of money, and you got to have some kind of a product in the jail to make the money. So there's that pathway is important. That pipeline is important to understand it, because when you get into that system, the bail bondsman's making money, the attorneys are making money, the jail folks are making money. It feeds a lot of people. So it's very important to have folks go to jail. Because if you don't have folks in jail, you don't have a product or some type of a system to make money by. So, and then again, when you have the males or, and I'm not talking just one household, but a community of households who are incarcerated, now have felonies, now can't get decent jobs. I mean, it's very, I would say the word calculated. Because once you get into that, it's extremely difficult to get out, if you can get out at all. And you get back into what you would call a different type of slavery, because if you can get a minimal paying job in a decent industry where you can get benefits and can take care of your household, that's somewhat rare. You end up being in jobs that you don't get any benefits, and you may not have steady employment, which then perpetuates and then becomes generational, and it becomes all of those things. So it's very, I think when you ask what the earlier question about, are things different or better or whatever, it's a very complex question and a very complex answer. It is not just as simple as I'm going to get a college education, or I'm going to become a skilled craftsman, or I'm going to live in a certain neighborhood, or any of those things. It's very complex. Not only people of color, African Americans, but you look at any other, and I think the ones that have managed to keep their culture intact and try to and actually I think monopolize a particular industry We see that a little bit in the Asian cultures. We see that in some Hispanic cultures. If you're able to do that, you still have a core or a corpus of some sort that allows your community to generate its own future. But when you split, divide, and cut off and disperse, basically we had a diaspora from Africa, and we had a diaspora here too, because it was very painful to see those people coming up from South America who were trying to get to the border, and the very first thing you did was split them up. Isn't that the same legacy that African Americans had? As soon as we got here, you split them up. And once you split that family structure, it's harder to stay together, and it's harder to keep those hope, if you will, resources, strength, power together. And the first thing you do is once you dissect that, it's extremely difficult. But we just witnessed that just in recent history.
Right.
Thank you, Denise. And we got about 15 minutes left, and I want us to also talk a little bit. We can continue what we're talking about right now, but we might add to it is what is happening around, what are some ideas or what have some people done, or some organizations or some churches done in order to try to make for people to be equitable and to be treated all equally. So I'm going to ask Tony to sing the hymn that is known as a Black national anthem. And it was first sung 122 years ago when it was done by a couple of some young men in Jackson, Florida, when they wanted to celebrate Abe Lincoln's birthday. And but today it is a very important song that we sing. And the second verse, we think, both Tony and I, and so we talked about this, seems to be the one that really fits into what we're dealing with right now. So Tony, would you sing the second verse of the hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing? We're not hearing you. There we go.
James Weldon Johnson wrote the lyrics and the music.
Stormy the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of our bright star is cast.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. What is the hope? What is happening? What hope do you see today? What do we need to do, and what is being done? And Denise, sometime throughout this all, you might share us a little bit as to how we would gain if we went to the African American Museum. We would welcome you to say that also sometime within this. We've got about 15 minutes left.
Denise said it well when she talked about the resilience of a people. And this song, this verse of that song really does speak to that resilience. And I think it is something that we have converted into a boundless sense of pride we are thrilled. We feel some sense of dignity because we're in a struggle that we're not giving up on. We're not people that are reactive or that are weak. We are strong, we're determined, and we're not going to be. So someone said, the song says, don't let nobody turn you around. Well, I'd say that is a statement about who we've been and really who we are today.
So I would say that, that there is a piece in which, there's a piece in which resilience has been a part, but I think there's also a piece where there's a group of people now that are saying, I don't want to be resilient anymore. Just stop doing it to me. I don't want to have to bounce back. I don't want to have to keep coming back. I don't want to have that resilient muscle. I want you to just stop. I want you to recognize that what you're doing is wrong, and I want you to stop. And I think that, that has, in this last, 4-year cycle,
Yes.
we have seen that happen time and time and time again, where it's just, things have been made very prevalent, very obvious, and, people have shown who they really are. And there is a piece in which there are people that are saying, you know what, I don't want to be resilient anymore. I don't want to have to fight back. I don't want to have to push back. I don't want to have to be in the storm. I just want to be able to live my life like everybody else and do what I need to do, feed my family, do what needs to happen. And so I think, as we look at how do we progress, you ask the question, is it about church? It's not about church. The church isn't the system that's oppressing people. The church, that's not the system that's oppressing people. It's the governmental system. It's those other systems. It's the institutionalized systems that are oppressive. And I'll be real honest, and we're supposed to be having open dialogue, but until white people begin to have conversation with white people about how they need to stop and how they need to change and how they need to pivot, we will be having this conversation 100 years from now. Because at the end of the day, it is the people who are in power, the people that hold the money, the people that hold the laws and make the government, that have to change in order for it to change for every brown person, not just Black people, because brown people all the way around are being oppressed. And the reason why that there are people that maybe wouldn't consider themselves white, but aren't being oppressed is because when I look at you, I don't see you as a brown person. I see you as a white person. I don't see, when I look at you, I don't see you and say, oh, they're Italian, or oh, they're Jewish, or oh, they're Episcopalian, or oh, I don't see that. I see Black, I see color. And when I see color, then I pigeonhole you into a category, period. And so that's where we really have to look at it. Sister Deborah wears a burqa, and so there's a piece in which, because she makes a hijab, and because she's wearing that hijab, there is a piece in which someone will say, oh, she must be this or she must be that, because I have stereotyped this group of people into believing that the stereotype, the thing that I've heard, the rhetoric that has been spoken from the highest office there is, has got to be correct. Because why would they lie to me? Why would my grandma lie to me? I taught 8th grade for a long time. I taught U.S. history. And so one of the things that I would challenge and I would push back on my students, and I would say, I don't care what your grandma thinks. I don't care what your mama thinks. I don't care what your auntie thinks. I want you to tell me what you believe and tell me why you believe it. And I don't even care if you don't believe the same thing I do, but I want you to understand why you believe what you believe. And it pushed back on some of the things that they had heard when I would say, why do you believe that? Why are you saying that? Where did that come from? Oh, well, my grandma said it. Okay, well, let's look at it. Let's look at the origin of that. I'm not mad at you because what you said is very racist, but I want you to understand where it comes from. I want you to understand why, I'm having a conversation with you, but the boy around the corner will punch you in the face for that. but I want to have that conversation with you. And I think that, so that doesn't really, I think we because Black people happen to be the most prevalent being abused on television and being abused in all spaces, it is happening to every population that is non-white.
Correct. I think you're absolutely right. And I think what you said in part of your statement is correct. It is a wide discussion, not the colored people discussion.
Amen.
It's not. The white have to come to terms with it, is that their time to be privileged is up. Their time to be superior is up. And it's time for themselves to review their action and their behavior. I think a couple of years before Obama finished his term, I think the majority leader in the Senate, McConnell, still the same guy now, right? He said, my job is to make sure Obama fails.
Mm-hmm.
That's his job.
Right.
Yeah, you can go ahead and dissect his statement. Okay, it's not about working for the people or working for a system or establishing justice or peace or freedom or anything. His main agenda was, how can I defeat this man? Okay, I don't think because it was only just a Democrat issue, it was more than that.
Mm-hmm.
He still believed in a history that says we are superior to the colored folks.
I think there are several things that we just haven't even approached. And I would start with, we haven't approached within our society being able to talk to each other. It is almost impossible for people to talk to each other and to discuss things openly. And there are some therapy rules that would help us in those discussions. If a person could use something like, the one side is going to state what they feel, and the other side is going to listen, and the only response they can give is to clarify that they have heard properly what the first person said. And once you finally get that all onto one page, then you go to the other person being able to state what they feel. And the response there again is only to clarify that you heard what the other person said. It has to be honoring, whether you agree or not, this is what this person said, this is what this person said, and eventually you can find some common ground, but it takes time and it takes a willingness, which I just don't see as being there. Nobody is willing to talk from that starting point. They all want to talk from their angle, not from the angle of, okay, let's hunt for common ground.
And
we
if
have to find a way to work together and bring it about.
Deborah, I think you just described the dinner dialogues that we do a few times a year. That's how we do that. And in fact, the issue really is not that we haven't been able to talk to each other, it's that we haven't been able to listen to each other.
Yeah, that's very well said.
That's the key. I'm sorry, Tony, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say that it's difficult too, because if you aren't feeling any pain, if racism isn't affecting you, then some people don't feel they need to talk about it. And I think it takes a corporate sense that when one is struggling, we're all struggling. You have to have a certain sense of compassion in order to want to be in dialogue. I just, that's an important piece of it, you know. And if the idea is that these people, meaning these African Americans or these other brown people, are lazy, you know, they're not smart. I mean, it's like blaming the victim. And it's
Very
really
definitely.
a challenge to, I mean, it's just I'm not saying it's not possible. And I think it can happen in pockets. But one of the things that I've been encouraged by is the Black Lives Matter movement, how they've been able to not only bring in people of color, but they have been able to bring in increasingly the younger generation, people of the dominant culture, who also have huge concerns and struggles.
Yes.
When you get that kind of thing happening, I think there is a chance, maybe for that upcoming generation. At least I hope so.
Yeah, and I think for the bottom line, one of the bottom lines for me is that this second verse of this song is wrong. It speaks of hope dying before being born. That, yes, that's where things used to be. But the end of the verse says that here we stand at last, where the bright stars, here we stand, we've gotten there. And we haven't gotten there. It's still a song of hope because we haven't gotten there.
Yes.
And it really does come down to, again, this is, I keep harping on this, I'm sorry, that at every step that we've talked about, the one significant piece that is missing is that the people of privilege have not been willing to give up some of their privilege. And without that point, nothing can happen. Today, it's a matter of people being able to say, there is a difference between equality and equity. We should work towards equity. And it's not a matter necessarily of saying, I have wealth, I have power, I have privilege, I want to bring you into that. But rather saying, I have to give up some of my privilege. I have to give up some of my power. I have to give up some of my wealth so that more people can be raised. And that's very difficult for anyone. It was difficult in the 19th century. It was difficult way back in the 20th century, and it's difficult today.
Any
I
final?
might just add just one quick thing. As we're talking about power, privilege, and resources and all those things, I think it's also noted that much of this is rooted into a nuclear social or a nuclear family system or as a community. And so when we look at people of color, regardless of what group they're coming from, most of the time they're very community, very multi-generational oriented. And very community, meaning that whether you are by blood or just relatives or just in the tribe or the community, you will share in resource regardless. And that there is a tendency to make sure that someone just said it, as the group or the community raises up, everyone raises up together. I think in other societies, that mentality or that position is not there. It's very nuclear, even within your own family, your own ranks. And so if you're not within that core unit of that family, and I think we see this play out even today, everyone else is dispensable and everyone else is used to raise that core group up. And if that is not indicative of some structures, as we talk about power and privilege, I don't know what is. And so the very few rule and reside over others. And it's not a democracy, it's not a collective, it's not a collaboration, it's not a community. And I think those two pieces right there, if you talk about what a group, a white group or whatever has to have these conversations, I think it really goes even deeper than that. I think you need to look at that core structure. How do you operate? If you operate as a nuclear structure, then none of this other is going to matter. You're not going to want to have that conversation because you're not going to want to give up your power, your privilege, and anything else. But if you are come from a position of a community or a multi-generational or the shared resources, you think nothing else other than that. And I think we see that a lot. And I'll give this one example, then I'll be quiet. when we see young African-American males come up from the community, which the community has seeded into them mostly all their lives, they make it, they're young athletes, they go into the big leagues, the NBA or in NFL or wherever, and they're being drafted, and you see this entire community go along with them. Whereas you look at a young white male, he's not bringing a community with him. It's just his one or two handlers or family or whatever, and only that community ascends. And it's not expected, right, for him to reach back and pull everyone else up. But then their opportunities are a lot different too. They may have a better opportunity or a chance at some point to change their circumstance, where all our hopes have been basically put on this one or two or three people who have been able to break that barrier, and they're wanting to bring the entire community up. And I think it's hard for other people to understand when they see that, well, why is his mama and aunt and everybody else coming? You don't need all that. Well, you know, all of them helped raise that child too. And I think that's part of the approach as to why it's foreign for some and not for others, because I think for us, it's not as, you don't think twice about going down the street and helping whomever, whether it's through the church, through the school, through whatever, through the museum or any other entity, through the business, through education systems. All of that is just part of the multi-community facet. So I think that has to be recognized and understood as to why you would even think it's okay. And then why others don't understand why when we go to the barrio or go here and they have 4 or 5 generations and extended family all in one household. And that's how this community moves forward versus, well, we're only taking those 2 or 3 people and the rest of you guys figure it out. So you had asked me about the Kansas African American Museum. I would say that just one quick thing, that we are certainly here, not only just in Wichita, but in the state of Kansas, to share the collective story. African American history and African history is American history. And I think that as we position ourselves to share that and get people to understand that growing up, and usually within your systems, it's very sanitized and very skewed of what you learn of history. What we hear over and over again is when people come to the museum, they learn about the history, the heritage, the culture. Why didn't I know that? Or I never knew that part, or I had no idea. Now we know that because we're living it. So there was a statement said to me the other day, I was on another panel, and a gentleman says, well, what do you think about this movie, blah, 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 Driving While Black? And I said, well, I do it every day. That's not a movie I need to go see. I could tell you all about Driving While Black, because I mean, I've been pulled over 3 times in one day just because that was the day that they were looking for Black folks driving, I guess. But I tell you, it's others who don't understand that onus that's on us to mainstream and to, you know, my white friend said, well, tell me what I need to know. It's like, I can't tell you what you need to know. You're going to have to make the determination that you're going to educate yourself and you want to know. There's no education I can give you. And I think that's the other positioning, is like, if you have conversations, it's what can I do to learn and be open. And we do help with the Kansas African American Museum from that position, but also from your other community events and community and cultural opportunities and conversations. Both Bill and Michelle Van are very steeped in that in the community and can steer you to many different other opportunities to be a part of those conversations or even just listen. But I think the onus is on others to want to do it. But we are available. We love to share the history as it pertains to the state of Kansas, and how through artifacts, through art, through education, and through any programs that we are a part of, whether it's a program that's initiated by the museum or a program that is in partnership with someone else who's doing programs, we certainly stand ready to be a part of this educational or conversation or discussion process and invite everyone to come and visit us.
Thank you, Denise. And
you're welcome.
Thank you all. I think we've gone about 5 minutes over what we usually do. I would sure love to hear more, but this conversation's got to continue. And so another month from now or so, we will have another conversation. And we'll have to deal with these things more than we have because we've just gotten started, I think. But I would really like for any one of you or all of you to send to me what you think the next piece of conversation we should have. What would it look like? What would you like to see happen? That would really be helpful, because I just kind of put it up together myself. It's just a SAM, and I don't want that. I really want your input for that. So if you would do that, that'd be very, very helpful. Now we're going to close this way. We got one more song, and we all should know it. We Shall Overcome. Now we're all going to sing it together, but we're going to mute ourselves, so we're not heard. The only one that will be actually singing it that will be heard is Tony Brown, and we'll sing "We Shall Overcome," and that will be the conclusion to our time today. So can we, Serinda, can you get us all on mute? I see I'm not on mute. I'm not. So put me on mute also. And Tony?
Yep.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Go up a step.
We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Nani.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, especially Tony
Well, thank you.
and Surinder.
Yeah, thank you very much. God bless. Inshallah.